but it's all about the Premier League this week. Thursday, night 4 in Dublin at the Free Arena, and it's time for our picks. We're level going into this fourth week. We're both on 9 points. Congratulations to anyone who's ahead of us. There's quite a few on the list, but let's get into the first game. It's the Premier League leader at the moment, Glen Durrant, against the conqueror of Michael Van Gogh last week, Nathan Aspinall. How do you see this one going?
Yeah. What a way to start it off. And if they were doing this, if they were setting the lineup tonight, I don't think this would be the first match. I think probably Gurney Smith would be, maybe even Rob Cross, Gary Anderson, because both of these players have had such a good start. And Aspinall beating Van Gogh last week, proving me wrong, because I said I didn't think he was ready. I knew he had the game to, but I didn't think he was ready to beat MVG on the Premier League stage. He proved me wrong, because he absolutely was ready. He brought his best performance yet in the Premier League at a moment that he needed to. He did benefit. He did benefit by the fact that Van Gogh also brought his worst performance of the season, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Nathan Aspinall played very well. Glen Durrant, it was a good bounce-back performance after what was a disappointing night against Fallon Sherrick. It was tough to player, of course, but he let the match slide away from him, and he could be 2 points clear right now. He has a chance to very momentarily move 3 points clear if he gets the full result. But I don't think he will, and I don't even think he'll get a point. Nathan Aspinall is going to move top of the Premier League at least for a couple hours, as I'm picking him to get it over the line and beat Glen Durrant 7-4.
Well, looking back at last week's predictions, yeah, we both said Michael Van Gogh would beat Nathan Aspinall. And looking at what our listeners did as well, a lot of people were doing the same. I think there was only 5 people that went with Nathan Aspinall. There was actually 2 people that went with Nathan to beat Van Gogh, and they also went with Glen Durrant to beat Gary Anderson, and they both got the scores exactly spot on. So well done to both of them. It's a tough one to call. I'm not sure which way I go on this. I think I'm going to go with the draw. I don't think I did any draws last week, and based on this Premier League so far, there seems to be at least one every week so far. So I've got my fingers crossed that the draw this week will come in the first game. It's hard for me to split them at the moment, so I'm just going to go with the draw 6-all.
Second match of the night, and it involves the former champion of the world, Rob Cross, currently 5th, just outside of the 4 on goal differential, going against 8th place Gary Anderson, just 1 spot above the drop, but also outside the 4, just on goal differential. 2-time former world champion Gary Anderson, that is. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I've got to say I was a little bit surprised at some of last week's results, and the one involving Gary Anderson last week, the defeat to Glen Durrant. I did not expect that at all, and Glenn really did a job on him in the end, was very clinical when he had to be, and a lot better on the doubles than he was the previous week. So back to normal really for him on the doubles. Gary, though, his first defeat in the Premier League. He's now well into it now. He's been playing on the Pro Tour at the weekends as well. So back getting used to that tour life of playing on the Thursday, then going somewhere to play at the weekend. Of course, won't be playing this weekend. He's not playing on the European Tour. So his focus purely on this week will be on the Premier League. And I've got it going to Gary Anderson. And one of the things that surprised me a little bit when I went to make these picks is just what a one-sided record he has against Rob Cross. Is 8 wins to 1, and Rob Cross's only win against Gary coming in the Premier League a couple of years ago, but that's a very dominant record, and I just think that Gary's probably playing the better at the moment, so I'm going to go with Gary to take this one 7-4.
Yeah, this is a tough one, and Gary Anderson's hit the ground running in the Players' Championship events, but he hasn't really hit his top gear in the Premier League, and he seems to be getting a little bit worse each week. He got over the line in the first match against Daryl Gurney, but Gurney is the player who's been playing the worst in the Premier League. He followed that up against an injured Peter Wright and only was able to manage a draw, and then went out and was clearly the second best player last week against Glen Durrant. Rob Cross, though, it's been a bit the opposite. He hasn't found his feet in the Players' Championship events. He's 27th in averages so far, behind Mervyn King, who hasn't been playing all that well, Chris Dobie, who hasn't been getting results. And 27th isn't bad, but it's not Premier League caliber. But he's been doing all right in the Premier League. Last week might not have been the best performance against Peter Wright, but he's still had his timing and was in that match. He played brilliantly against Gerwyn Price. He played very well against Nathan Aspinall, beating him. He seems to be more performing on the big stage and struggling off of it, and Gary Anderson's the other way around. And I think that'll continue this week. So I'm going to go for Rob Cross to get that second win in the Premier League over Gary Anderson. I think it'll be a tight match, but I'm going to pick Voltage to win it 7-5 and maybe just put Gary Anderson in the thick of a relegation battle, even though it's still early days. If he starts picking up losses, it's not that far down to Gurney.
Third game of the night then, and it is the man at the bottom of the table, the handicapper's nightmare, Daryl Gurney against Michael Smith. How do you see this one going?
I mean, we could also almost call Michael Smith the handicapper's nightmare, but what a start to the Premier League campaign it's been for Bully Boy, and it's kind of like what he did 2 years ago. He's just put in good performance after good performance. He's one of only two players whose overall average so far is over the ton through 3 matches, and that's because, well, he averaged 105 in just destroying Johnny Clayton in front of the Welsh crowd. And that was after a match where he let it slip away against Gerwyn Price, but still played well. And he didn't play poorly against Michael Smith in that first match. Gurney starting to come into some form, but he's not at the level of Michael Smith so far this year in either the Players' Championship events or, obviously, in the Premier League. And I think that's where it's going to make the big difference. Michael Smith is a top 10 player on the floor, and he's a top 2 player so far in the Premier League in averages. Gurney, just a few cuts behind that. He's closing the gap, but he's not there yet. I'm going Bully Boy to win it 7-3.
Well, I think this is the week that either one of us is going to pull away from each other, or we're both going to get it completely wrong, because I've gone the other way on this one as well. I'm going 7-5 to Daryl Gurney on this one. Yeah, we spoke about him earlier on the show. He's getting better. There is still, I think there's still a little bit more to come from him, and he's going to have to produce that game if he is going to get some points in the rest of this first phase of the Premier League and avoid being the man to be eliminated. Michael Smith played so well last week, and we spoke about he threw away that game against Gerwyn Price, but got over the line so well last week, 7-1. And when you think of the goal difference as well, a win like that helps a lot. Some big finishes in there, a 1-6-7, a 1-4-2 to win it in the end. So he played very well last week. A couple of early exits at the weekend and still played well. I think he had a 95 and a 100 average, but went out first round. Speaking again about how tough it is to get through these floor events, you do need a little bit of luck. But I think this might just be the week where we see Daryl get that first win. Again, I could see it going either way, but I've just got a feeling that Daryl might get the W. So yeah, I'm going 7-5 to the handicapper's nightmare.
Now, let's see if we can keep the disagreement going. I don't want to give away my pick, but I don't think we'll be disagreeing on this one. But maybe I'm wrong. We have the 4th challenger of the year, Willie O'Connor, and he gets the nicest and the most gentle of all draws, going against the world number 1 and 4-time reigning champion, 5-time overall, Michael Van Gerwen. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I've got a feeling we're not going to be disagreeing on this one, and I think we're probably going to both play our joker on this one as well, if I've got my crystal ball out still. But I'm going with Michael Van Gerwen, 7-3. It is a tough opening to Premier League life, if you like, for Willie O'Connor, and going up against Michael Van Gerwen as a contender or a challenger. It's gone well in the past. John Henderson last year in Aberdeen getting that draw, but I don't think it's going to happen again. And I think given that Michael lost last week, he'll be desperate to pick up those 2 points this week. And he won't like going to a Premier League and being not top of the table. Okay, still week 4 we're going into now, but he is a player that likes to see himself at the top of the table, and he'll be gutted that he lost his unbeaten record. But all he can do now is just keep picking up wins and try and push clear of the rest of the field. And this is no disrespect to Willie O'Connor, but this is the ideal opportunity to do it. Your challenger game going up against a player that's not in that top 10. Okay, he's beaten Michael before on a stage on the European tour. I think he got to a quarter-final at the weekend as well, so he's been playing okay. But I just think that the stage, the Premier League, it's all made for a win for the world number 1. So I'm going 7-3 to Michael Van Gerwen, and I'm going to play my joker for this game as well.
Yeah, if we had this match 6 months ago, if the Premier League was in the autumn as opposed to the spring, this would have been a much, much tougher draw because Willie O'Connor was just playing some blinding stuff last year, helping the Irish team to the World Cup final, winning his first event on the floor early in the year. But he's dropped off a little bit this year. I still think he has the game to crack the top 32 this year, and this past weekend showed some signs that he was getting towards that. The rustiness of the winter break is finally starting to go. But I don't think Willie O'Connor is quite where he needs to be yet. Obviously, Van Goren is also off of his best game, but it's still right now a little bit too much for Willie O'Connor. You said 7-3, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That was the score I was thinking about going, but I mean, I don't want to completely agree. So I'll go one leg closer, 7-4. I think Willie O'Connor will stitch together a couple legs, but in the end, Van Goren will be a little bit too much for him. And like you, I'm going to use my joker on this, 7-4 to the world number one.
Final game of the night, and what a game it could be just based on what we saw them two produce at the weekend, is Gerwyn Price against Peter Wright. How do you see this one going?
Well, this is the match of the night. This is one of the matches of the first stage of the Premier League. And it's a big match, a really big match for both of them, because they're both currently in that quagmire of players who have 3 points, and they're currently outside the top four on goal differential. And for both of them, it means a lot to be able to make the playoffs. Gerwyn Price hasn't in his two Premier League campaigns, narrowly missing out last year. Peter Wright had, of course, the year where he should have won the title, but outside of that, hasn't been able to really play his best in the Premier League and has struggled the last few years in the Premier League since that. This is a chance for the winner of this to almost certainly be in the top four at the end of the day, or to be in at the very least in the same position where they were before. But for whoever loses it, assuming it's not a draw, there might start to be a little bit of pressure, and that pressure can build quickly. We were talking about Gurney earlier today. He already has a lot of it because of the deficit he's built. This is a huge match for both of them, not just to settle what happened to settle the result of what was a very tight match on Sunday, but also to stay in the race for the O2 and to avoid having a lot to do after the middle of the season. I don't know. I don't know how to separate these two. I'm going to say Peter Wright's going to go over the line 7-5 because I don't want to pick a draw. There's been enough of those, especially involving Gerwyn Price. The easy play with Price has been a draw so far. But I think Peter Wright will win at 7-5, but I am more than prepared to be wrong with that tip.
Well, I've got the exact same score going to Peter Wright on this one. I was thinking about maybe going for the draw. I'm not quite sure if anyone's gone 4 draws to start off a Premier League season, but that is what would happen if Gerwyn Price was to split the points again. It is a very hard game to call, and you look back at some of the games that these two have had, the one at the weekend, the Grand Slam final where Gerwyn Price produced one of the best ever performances on TV in a one-sided final, the World Championship semi-final more recently where Peter did a real job on Gerwyn Price. But I think it's a general consensus that these are two of the best free players in the world right now, and they both shared the titles at the weekend. Gerwyn beating the world number one in Sunday's final, so he got to 2 finals, which takes some doing after what we've spoken about this week about the standard. But I've just got the feeling that Peter Wright's going to take the 2 points on this one, and I think he went into last week feeling a bit of pressure because he hadn't got that win, and as a world champion you do have that pressure. He's got a big target on his back this year. Everyone wants to get a win over the world champion, and I think he did very well to get that win against Rob Cross, because Rob did very well. He started off very poorly, but came back to force it to a 12th leg and Peter getting over the line. And I think he's just going to get the job done in this one. And who knows, as we know, this is the last game of the night. These two could find themselves lower than the 6th and 7th that they are on the table. If Gary Anderson and Dale Gurney pick up some points, they could find themselves a little bit lower. And if either of them loses, they could start to be looking over their shoulder and thinking, wow, all of a sudden I'm in a bit of a battle here to make sure that I'm going to be in the second phase. But I just think being the world champion, Peter Wright is going to get the win on this occasion. And like you, I've got it 7-5 to the world champion.